Ladies and gentlemen, I spend most of my time in secular situations, and I've learnt to begin everything I do, but particularly any speaking I have to do publicly, with a private prayer, as I have done now. But it's wonderful to be in the company of people who can pray publicly. And one of the prayers that I often begin with is, in Arabic, it's A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, which means protect me from from Satan. And the significance of that, I hope, will become a little bit clearer as I try and cover the remit I've been given. The other prayer, which I think that's worth talking about, is relevant to the topic that Robin has set us, is the one that the Sheikh mentioned, which was رَبَّنَا عَطَيْنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Now, what does that mean? It means, O Lord, give us everything that's beautiful in this world and in the hereafter, and don't destroy us, or let us be destroyed. It's a very profound thing, and it's worth thinking about. And one of the lessons that I draw from it is that beauty and destruction are polar opposites. Give us everything that's beautiful in this world and the next, and do not destroy us. Amen. Destruction is the opposite of beauty. So that's worth thinking about, and it's something that only came to mind when I heard the Sheikh start off with those prayers. I was asked to talk about radicalization, which of course is linked to terrorism. And terrorism, in many people's minds today, is linked to religion. So what is this problem? Well, there's lots of people who have some very good ideas, do community work, interfaith dialogue, empowering young people and so on. Those things are very important, and they are very good, and they do have an impact. But I'm not going to talk really about any of them, because the real cause of this rests above. Those very necessary, very noble initiatives are treating the symptoms of the problem rather than the problem itself. And the question I think we need to ask ourselves is religion a cause of violence or not? A lot of my friends who are not religious tell me that it is. And there's huge amounts of evidence they can bring forward for that. Indeed, a chap called Karl Heinze in the 1820s wrote a fantastic book called Murder and Liberty, in which he very graphically described how the Kaiser's regime was murderous, and how also the church was an institution of murder, and how to gain the liberty for the common man, you had to fight fire with fire, you had to murder the murderers, you had to torture, you had to destroy these institutions that were standing in the way of liberty for the ordinary man. He described in detail in this very small book, very graphically, how you could commit and should commit acts of terrorism through destroying trains in which the royal family was traveling, through using poison darts in churches to assassinate people, to put explosives under the cobblestones of your village. When the Kaiser's forces come along, they will be destroyed by them. We now have a word for this. It's called IEDs, improvised explosive devices. This is in the 1840s, and he gave those examples very interestingly in the context of Imagine if you read these headlines in the newspapers. So this act of terror is meaningless unless it has publicity. And so these methods of terrorism and these, the method of linking terrorism to the media, to publicity, is something that he and others coined in the 1840s, but he did so to destroy religion, to destroy the structures of political power that were around him. And that actually might seem ludicrous to us, but it was a very powerful intellectual argument which resulted in a huge, or which contributed rather, to a huge wave of popular politics in which it was assumed, and to some degree it still is assumed, that you cannot have power, you cannot have peace, you cannot have liberty without violence. This intrinsic link in the age of scientific reason between violence and religion. Now, is religion a cause of violence? Yes, you can find lots of evidence. But for my non-religious friends, I say to them this: you need scientific proof of your thesis. And let me give you a scientific example. And that is, which society have we had, certainly in the recent past, or even in the long-term past, in which religion was officially removed as a mechanism, as a force, as an influence in that society? The one that we can most think of, I would guess, is the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, with its overt anti-religious ideology, lasted for 75 years. Western academics, security officials, had estimated that the Soviet Union, during its time from the revolution, had murdered or killed, in various ways, 3 million people. After the fall of the Soviet Union, when people had access to research data, it was clear that the Soviet Union had killed, murdered over 33 million people. So to suggest that religion is the cause of violence, I think, doesn't stand up to scrutiny at all, if you look at the evidence both ways. And I think a lot of what I was going to say has been very eloquently said by John, that the Pope has said there is no religion which advocates at its core violence. I think if you're a Christian, you would quite rightly say, look at the life of Jesus Christ. When did he advocate violence? What did he say about violence? The only thing I can find, and I'm not a scholar of the Bible, is turn the other cheek. 300 years the Christians avoided violence, and it was only when Constantine I had this dream that under this sign you shall conquer, Chiro, that we start seeing violence come in and to be used by Christians. And of course, sadly, for whatever reason, Christian nations subsequently have committed violence. They've committed violence in the name of Christianity, in the name of God. But that does not mean that the religion itself, the message itself, was one of violence. And you see this again in other religions. Right now, I don't think anybody could say that there is a religion that advocates pacifism more so than the Buddhists. And what do we see in Myanmar right now? You see violence being encouraged and led by monks, Buddhist monks. So this violence, I'm afraid, is an intrinsic feature of human life. And that is why we have religion to tell us that this isn't a good thing. And so I think the point that I was going to make has been made very much more eloquently than I can possibly make. So what I think we need to think about is what does religion contribute to politics? First of all, should we mix politics and religion? And when we look at the history of religion and violence, we see that only when politics comes into religion, we get movements, interpretations of religion, and corruption of scripture in some cases to advocate violence. And the reason for that, well, my research and my supervisor when I was doing my PhD made me spend nights trying to answer the question. He said to me, what's the difference between religion and politics? And it seems such an easy question to answer, and the more you think about it, the harder it is. But I can tell you the one answer I eventually got, it took me years to think about it, was this. Religion inspires us, requires us, whatever belief we have, and I'm talking about non-religious beliefs as well, to achieve perfection. And if you compromise any of your beliefs in whatever religion you have, whatever philosophy you have, it is a lack of faith. So you compromise your beliefs, you are compromising your faith. The problem with politics is that you have to be pragmatic. You have to make compromise decisions, because politics is about power, it is about organization, it is about balancing competing interests, competing views. And as human beings, no matter if we're of the same faith, we won't have the same understanding. No two human beings, regardless of their faith, will have the same interpretation and the same understanding. So what do? Do you compromise? If your faith and your politics are the same thing, you are compromising your faith. If you are compromising your politics. And so that's the reason why, according to me anyway, that I think religion and politics are different. But religion has an important role. It has had a phenomenal role in our current civilization. We have glossed over, we ignore it because of modernity, which feels, because of the history of the abuses of religion, particularly in Western society, that religion is relegated to the private sphere, so that people like me don't pray publicly. We speak in the language that everybody understands. So this relegation